This isn't a movie set. This is Kathmandu, Nepal. Today. Just a few miles from here, Western tourists are finishing their Himalayan tricks, posting photos of a spiritual paradise, oblivious to the hell consuming the capital. The air that smells like incense and prayers in the valleys. In the streets, it smells like burnt rubber and fear. The sky that should frame the sacred peaks of the Himalayas is choked with the thick smoke of hatred. The sound of mantras in the monasteries has been replaced by the echo of sirens and the screams of a revolution. In the last few hours, Nepal's capital has plunged into a night of fury the world has not yet managed to process. The rage, simmering for decades and channeled into a digital murmur, was silenced by government censorship. And that muzzle was the final mistake. When Nepal's Gen Z, the youth who grew up with the world in the palm of their hand, took to the streets, they didn't bring signs, they brought fire. What we are about to show you is brutal. It is the chronicle of how fortresses of luxury, built with stolen money, were turned into infernos of brick and ash. And at the epicenter of it all, an act of cruelty so extreme, it stopped the planet. The moment an enraged mob surrounded the mansion of a former prime minister and burned his wife alive inside. This is the story of a country pushed to its absolute limit, the story of a digital fuse that lit a real-world powder keg. To understand the fire, you have to understand the contempt. For years, Nepal's youth watched a spectacle of corruption. It wasn't abstract, it was daily fact. It was the endemic unemployment, forcing their siblings and friends to seek work in subhuman conditions in Qatar or Malaysia, sending home the money that propped up the nation. Money that was immediately eroded by runaway inflation and taxes that funded the lavish lifestyle of the elite. And that life was flaunted without shame. The Nepo kids, the children and relatives of politicians, were not discreet. Their social media feeds were a catalog of daily insults to the people. The turning point, weeks before the explosion, was a viral video. A minister's son, visibly drunk, crashed his Porsche at high speed, killing a street vendor. He got out of the car, made a phone call, and within minutes, the police arrived, not to arrest him, but to disperse the witnesses. The case was buried, the video was not. It was the definitive proof that two justice systems existed in Nepal, one for them and another for everyone else. The people's only weapon was this: going viral. The internet was the courtroom where scandals were exposed, the public square where anger was shared. Then the government made its final error. Citing national security risks and the need to protect social harmony, they implemented a national firewall. The cell phone screens went black. TikTok, Facebook, X, Instagram, disconnected. They hadn't counted on one thing. A generation born online does not accept being silenced. In the digital sewers, in Telegram and Signal groups, the organizing began. If they could no longer expose the corrupt with hashtags, they would expose them with flames. The first target was chosen with surgical precision, the fortress of one of the men who architected the digital censorship, a politician with a cynical smile who, days earlier, had given a press conference stating the blockade was a necessary medicine for a society sick with disinformation. His home, in one of Kathmandu's wealthiest and most walled-off neighborhoods, became the opening target of the fury. The crowd didn't arrive shouting, they came in silence, a mass of thousands of young people moving through the dark streets, an army of shadows coordinated by encrypted messages. The elite residents watched from their windows, terrified. The police, expecting a protest in the city center, were caught completely off guard. By the time they arrived, it was too late. The mansion's steel gate had been torn from its hinges. They swarmed the immaculate lawn, not as thieves, but as an occupying army. But the main target was already gone. Minutes before the full invasion, as the gates gave way, a private helicopter took off from the mansion's roof. The politician and his family fled in a hurry, taking to the skies and abandoning their empty fortress to the mob. The escape, filmed by thousands of cell phones, only fueled the hatred. Now in possession of the house, the protesters began to methodically dismantle every symbol of luxury. The sound of marble statues being shattered, of patio furniture being thrown into the pool, of bulletproof windows cracking under the impact of iron bars. No one stole anything. The message was clear. We don't want what you have. We want to destroy what you represent. The final act was symbolic, a macabre spectacle designed to be filmed and go viral. They dragged their luxury belongings and furniture from the house, flipped them upside down, and set them on fire. A $500,000 bonfire, its flames rising high into the Kathmandu sky, illuminating the night with an unequivocal message for the rest of the elite. We are coming, and your walls will not hold us back. The bonfire acted as a beacon. The footage, disseminated via VPNs and alternative networks, wasn't just news, it was a tutorial. If the walls of the elite could be torn down in Kathmandu, then no castle anywhere in the country was safe. The revolt, once concentrated, now spread like wildfire, with pockets of protest exploding in other cities. The message had been received, and the hunt continued. The second flame was one of cowardice. The target was the home of Minister Ramesh Lekhak, who, feeling the pressure from the streets, resigned from his post right at the beginning of the protests. His resignation was seen not as an apology, but as a confession of guilt and an attempt to escape justice. The crowd did not accept it. In another coordinated action, filmed by hundreds of cell phones, the protesters marched to his house and set it on fire. Since he had already abandoned power, the people decided to erase the symbol of his stolen wealth. The third house attacked belonged to one of the country's most notorious politicians, a former leader who had become the ultimate symbol of the corrupt elite. Known for squandering the people's money on personal luxury, he watched as popular fury turned against his clan. In another night of chaos, televised by cell phones, the mob set his main residence on fire. Not satisfied, the protesters marched and also burned down his daughter's house, in a dual attack that was celebrated on social media as a direct blow against nepotism. As the flames consumed the mansions of the corrupt elite, another type of image began to go viral. It was the fourth house of this story, but it was not being attacked. On the contrary, it was being protected by the protesters themselves. It was the modest residence of Sushila Karki, the woman who would soon inherit the country in ashes. As you can see in these images, her house is the opposite of everything the people were destroying. No high walls, no private security, no garage full of imported cars, just a simple, middle-class home in an ordinary neighborhood. While the fury burned the symbols of corruption, Karki's house became a viral symbol of hope. Protesters were calling her the people's prime minister even before she was appointed. It was living proof that another type of leadership was possible. The toll of the people's revolt was 30 dead and thousands injured, with the parliament and Supreme Court buildings left in charred ruins. Today, the streets of Kathmandu don't belong to the protesters, but to army tanks, which enforce a fragile peace over a traumatized and economically devastated city. A new transitional prime minister has been appointed, but the question hanging in the air is whether she is inheriting a country in reconstruction or just the ashes of a conflict that could reignite at any moment. This is the Nepal the media rarely shows, a country where the line between justice and vengeance has been incinerated. The story of the burned houses is a warning to the world. In the digital age, censorship doesn't create silence, it creates fire. If this story impacted you and showed you a reality that needs to be known, leave a like so this message can reach further. Share it with those who need to understand the world beyond the headlines. And subscribe to the channel, because our journey isn't about tourism. It's about truth, courage, and the behind-the-scenes glimpses of places power doesn't want you to see. We're counting on you.